During what began as a normal work shift in Frisco in December 2024, 25-year-old Lyft driver Delava Burke was brutally attacked from behind by a customer. The suspect, 19-year-old Antwain Williams, is accused of slashing Burke's throat repeatedly, attempting to choke him and stealing his car. Burke was dropping Williams off at an apartment complex when the attack occurred at around 6:00 p.m. His assailant left him in the parking lot where an onlooker helped him with his wounds and dialed 911. He survived with serious injuries and was left hospitalized and bedridden as he began his recovery. Several hours after the incident, an officer spotted Burke's stolen car and tried to pull it over. The driver fled, leading police on a chase until he lost control of the car and crashed. Williams then tried to flee on foot but was apprehended by law enforcement. At the time of his arrest, he was wanted on an outstanding warrant for an aggravated assault charge. He's also facing charges stemming from the attack on Burke, including aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon and evading arrest, and is being held at the Denton County Jail in lieu of bonds totaling over $1 million. Number 29. Kyle Andrew Coolack. Eddie Mason of Pomeroy, Iowa, thought he was helping a harmless person in need when he took in a transient. In October of 2024, he saw the man holding up a sign that said, "Veteran needing work," and decided to offer him both a job and a place to stay. Barely a week later, Mason awoke to text messages from someone telling him that his new roommate was wanted in Texas for murder. He later told news reporters that he immediately confronted the roommate, 39-year-old Kyle Andrew Coolack, who reportedly admitted to shooting his brother. Mason ordered Coolack to leave and contacted the police, who saw the fugitive walking along a roadside and took him into custody. Mason's sister, Janie Voyek, told the media that she and Coolack had started dating during his short stay at the residence. She described the man, whom she knew as Bryant, as charismatic and charming until he became intoxicated one night and bluntly confessed to killing his brother. According to the Houston Police Department, Coolack fatally shot his brother, 35-year-old Brad Henry Coolack, at an apartment in March of 2022. Before going on the run, Kyle called 911 and told the operator that Brad had been shot multiple times and that CPR was not being performed because he was already dead. Brad and Kyle's mother told investigators that Kyle owned a gun and that she believed he was likely responsible for Brad's death. Immediately before gunshots rang out, neighbors overheard one of the men yelling to the other, "You slept with my wife!" While speaking with detectives, Brad's ex-wife admitted that she and Kyle had had an affair while Brad was deployed overseas with the military. By the time the authorities officially filed murder charges against Kyle in July of 2022, he had had an opportunity to make a run for it. Following his arrest, he was extradited to Harris County, Texas, where he remains in custody with bond set at $250,000. Number 28. Romi Frentescu and Alyssa Sevilla. An ongoing dispute between two men in Bruceville, Eddie, took a murderous turn on an otherwise ordinary Saturday evening in October 2024, ending with one of them dead and the other behind bars. The altercation occurred between 32-year-old Romi Frentescu, a Coca-Cola driver, and Cossacks Motorcycle Club member, and 38-year-old Michael Morris, who also has ties to the Cossacks. Police arrived at the scene at around 7:30 p.m. to find a GMC pickup truck partially on top of a motorcycle. Morris and his son, 18-year-old Braxton Johnson, were fatally shot. According to the version of events given to the police by Frentescu, Morris rode past Frentescu's home while he was outside working on his motorcycle and gave him the middle finger. Frentescu got on his motorcycle and followed Morris to his house, where he told Morris to leave him alone. As Frentescu began riding back to his house, Morris followed him and supposedly challenged him to a fight. Both men stopped their motorcycles and the confrontation quickly became physical. Frentescu claimed that he fired his gun in self-defense when Morris came at him with a switchblade, and that the driver of the pickup truck had tried running him over during the struggle. But the evidence at the scene and the woman who had stopped to aid the victims told a different story. The Good Samaritan claimed that as she performed CPR on one of the victims, Frentescu stepped out of a red pickup truck in his Cossack's vest and told her to stop because he wanted them both to die. Fearing for her safety, the woman complied with the command and backed away from the victims. Blood spatter on the GMC pickup truck indicated that the shooting had already started when the vehicle pulled up, casting further doubt on Frentescu's self-defense claim. Frentescu and his girlfriend/getaway driver, 30-year-old Alyssa Sevilla, are now facing charges of capital murder and tampering with evidence. Records show that Frentescu remained in custody at the McLennan County Jail while Sevilla was released. Number 27. Pedro Luis Parra Pulgar. On the morning of November 6th, 2024, police in the community of Fulshire responded to a 911 caller's report that their neighbor's house was on fire. Officers arrived to find the residence engulfed in flames and sprang into action to rescue a toddler who remained trapped inside the house after his two oldest siblings had escaped. Harrowing body cam footage showed Police Sergeant Brandon Mosley entering the home through a window and grabbing the little boy, who was in and out of consciousness. He was airlifted to the hospital where he was treated for severe smoke inhalation, while his brothers were taken to the hospital by ambulance. Much to the relief of emergency responders, all three kids survived the blaze and are now in the care of relatives. Their father, 46-year-old Venezuelan national Pedro Luis Parra Pulgar, was taken to the emergency room with extensive injuries. Authorities believe he intentionally set fire to the home, fully aware that his children were inside. After spending several weeks in the hospital, Pulgar was booked into the Fort Bend County Jail, where he remains in custody on 3 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of arson, and a federal immigration hold. According to news reports, his immigration status is unknown, but Texas Governor Greg Abbott used Pulgar's arrest as an opportunity to emphasize his dedication to helping incoming President Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, deport as many illegal immigrants as possible. Number 26. Roberto Hernandez. While responding to a report of shots fired at a Houston residence on Christmas Day in 2023, police found 43-year-old Roberto Hernandez and his wife, 34-year-old Fanny Uresti, dead from gunshot wounds. The couple's 3 children were in the home when the incident occurred, and one of the kids told officers that they had overheard their parents arguing before gunshots broke out. 11 days earlier, Uresti had gone to a police station and asked for help escaping from Hernandez, who she claimed was stalking her. She received contact information for domestic violence charities, but she didn't get away in time to save her life. Uresti's mother, Rosa Salinas, told KPRC2 that Hernandez psychologically controlled Uresti and didn't let her have friends. The grieving mother made it her mission to urge other women in domestic violence situations to do everything in their power to find safety before it's too late. Number 25. Jorge Esparza. Shortly before midnight on August 9th, 2020, 22-year-old Jorge Esparza approached 27-year-old nursing student Ricardo Medina Madriz on a Dallas sidewalk and shot him in cold blood. According to police, Esparza had stalked Medina Madriz, who was on his way home after having dinner with a woman Esparza used to date. The woman, Denise, would later testify that she and Esparza had a non-exclusive relationship and hadn't seen each other in months when the shooting occurred, but Esparza was obsessed with her and continued to contact her after she ended the fling. During police questioning, Esparza admitted that he had created at least 10 Instagram accounts in his efforts to contact Denise prior to the shooting. He told the interrogator that Denise would respond to his messages but always block him when he suggested meeting up in person. Esparza confessed to shooting Medina Madriz and was charged with murder. During his trial, he told jurors that he was confused on the night of the interrogation and that he said what he thought the investigator wanted to hear. He admitted to driving to Denise's house on the night of the killing, but denied stalking the woman, claiming that he had been planning to apologize to her. But the people from Esparza's past told a much different story, testifying in court that he was controlling, jealous, and had a history of stalking his former partners. After deliberating for a few days, the jury found Esparza guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, which means he could see freedom again starting in 2054. Number 24. James Hart. On May 31, 2024, the lifeless body of 30-year-old mother of four Giselle Salazar Tapia was found hanging from a dock at a boat marina in League City. Her neighbor, Cristian Allen, called 911 after finding her half-submerged in the water. He later told news station KHOU that he initially thought the woman's body was a mannequin, but that he soon recognized her. Both Allen and responding members of law enforcement quickly noticed that Salazar Tapia's arm was raised, with nothing holding it up, indicating that she had died somewhere else and that someone had moved her body after rigor mortis had set in. Her body was found right next to the boat that she lived on with her boyfriend, 51-year-old James Hart, who soon became a person of interest in the case. During an interview with KHOU 11 days after Salazar Tapia's body was found, Hart insisted that he had no involvement in her death, claiming that his girlfriend had left the boat in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and never came back. He described Salazar Tapia's death as the worst thing that had ever happened to him and a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. In addition to maintaining his innocence, Hart said that he thought he knew who might have killed her. But Hart was the only suspect in the eyes of the authority, who charged him with evidence tampering nearly 2 months after Salazar Tapia's death. He's currently in custody at the Galveston County Jail with bond set at $80,000 and has not been charged with his girlfriend's murder. Number 23. Aubrey Vanlandingham. In what was described in an arrest report as a display of jealousy, a high school teenager named Aubrey Vanlandingham is accused of poisoning her rival's show goat during a livestock show in Cedar Park in October 2024. Surveillance footage reportedly showed the young woman using a drench gun to force pesticide down the goat's throat. The goat, Willie, tried to avoid Vanlandingham but was ultimately cornered and powerless to defend himself against her. Over the next few hours, Vanlandingham came to check on Willie twice and eventually called her rival's mother to let her know that Willie wasn't doing well. Willie died less than a day later, and Vanlandingham confessed to killing him because she thought his owner was a cheater. Police learned that the teen had poisoned Willie repeatedly over a several-day period. Vanlandingham was arrested on suspicion of felony cruelty to livestock animals, but the victim's family is worried that she'll get away with a slap on the wrist. In the meantime, Vanlandingham has been suspended from school as she awaits her next court date, which is scheduled for January of 2025. Number 22. Susan Wright. Nicknamed the Blue-Eyed Butcher, 26-year-old Susan Wright made national headlines in January of 2003 for the particularly brutal nature in which she murdered her husband. 34-year-old Jeff Wright had been tied to the couple's bed, stabbed nearly 200 times with 2 different knives, and buried in the backyard of their Houston home. The following day, Susan filed for a restraining order against Jeff, claiming domestic violence. Authorities learned about the murder 5 days after it occurred, when Susan contacted her lawyer and confessed to the crime. By then, she had tried to cover up the killing by painting the bedroom walls. She claimed she had acted in self-defense and pleaded not guilty to murder. During her trial in February 2004, Susan took the stand in her own defense, telling the jury that Jeff had attacked her in a cocaine-fueled rage. She claimed that she couldn't stop stabbing Jeff because she was afraid he'd get his hands on the knife and kill her. The prosecutor accused Susan of fake crying in a bid to garner the jury's sympathy and brought up her past as a topless dancer in an apparent attempt to disparage her character. After deliberating for over 5 hours, the jury found Susan guilty of murder and sentenced her to 25 years in prison. She successfully appealed her case with the help of her slain husband's ex-girlfriend, who testified that Jeff was abusive, and in 2010 the court reduced Susan's sentence to 20 years after being denied parole in 2014 and 2017. Susan was paroled in 2020 at the age of 44 after serving roughly 16 years. Number 21. Ocastor Ferguson. 33-year-old Kayla Kelly was reported missing in Collin County on January 11, 2023. Her loved ones told investigators that she was dating a man known only as Kevin and that she had been planning to blackmail him after discovering that he was married. They didn't know Kevin's last name or any other information about him because they disapproved of Kelly dating a married man and refused to discuss the matter with her. While paying a visit to Kelly's duplex, police found her dog alone without food or water. Knowing she'd never purposely abandon her beloved canine companion, this caused Kelly's friends and family to fear the worst. The following day, police found Kelly's car abandoned and burned beyond recognition, along with evidence of a deliberate arson. Detectives identified the mysterious Kevin as 32-year-old Ocastor Ferguson. He told police that he had last seen Kelly the day before she was reported missing, when she dropped him off at his workplace. His phone location data told a different story, however. By putting him at the scene of Kelly's burned-out vehicle, it also led investigators to the shallow grave where Kelly's murdered remains were found. An autopsy revealed that she had been strangled to death, and Ferguson was charged with her murder. After deliberating for just an hour in May of 2024, a jury found Ferguson guilty as charged. He maintained his innocence during his sentencing hearing, claiming that he had been abducted by 3 men who were mad about him dating Kelly and that they must have killed her. In a surprising twist, his wife supported him throughout the case, despite knowing that he had cheated on her, blaming his infidelity on his young age. But it failed to sway the jury in Ferguson's favor, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Number 20. Brenda Lazaro.
I don't know what the name was. I don't know what the name. Oh my God.
You're at Beltline and where, ma'am?
And my MacArthur.
I need you to walk outside. Go outside. And go to a neighbor.
Oh my God.
I need you to stop. I need you to help me.
Late one night in early February 2014, a hysterical woman called 911 in Coppell, Texas, and reported that her boyfriend, 27-year-old Jonathan Cruz, had been shot inside his apartment. By the time officers arrived at the scene, Cruz had succumbed to a bullet wound to the head. His girlfriend of 3 months, 27-year-old Brenda Lazaro, denied causing the fatal injury. Jonathan had a history of depression, but his family immediately suspected Lazaro of lying. On several occasions, those closest to him had noticed troubling signs of possible jealousy and possessiveness in Lazaro, even when she wasn't there. For example, Jonathan's mother had to tell him to put his phone down during a family vacation because he spent every waking second texting with Lazaro. The two had just started dating, and in hindsight, the constant phone interaction seemed like more of a red flag than the thrill of a new relationship. During another incident, Lazaro supposedly became infuriated toward Cruz for greeting a female friend with a platonic hug during a double date. Her anger over Cruz's friendship with the woman, Emily Ramsey, only grew with time. The day before his death, Cruz ended the relationship due to Lazaro's controlling ways. Lazaro failed to attend his funeral, which only furthered the family's suspicions that she was responsible for his death. Speaking with Dateline in 2023, Cruz's loved ones said that they believe Lazaro showed up at his apartment and tried persuading him to give her another chance after he broke up with her. According to their theory, an argument broke out and Brenda shot Jonathan in a fit of anger when she didn't get her way. Lazaro maintained her innocence, claiming that she was a welcome guest at Cruz's apartment. She was never charged in connection with the case, and Cruz's manner of death remains undetermined to this day. His family spent years urging authorities to continue treating the incident as a possible homicide, but that never happened. The case is inactive and for all intents and purposes is classified as an unfortunate tragedy. The Cruz family sued Lazaro for wrongful death, and in 2022 a jury awarded them $206 million. They know they'll probably never see the funds, but they made it clear long ago that the principle of the matter is more important than money. Brenda has since gotten married and is now a mother of 2, and while she's innocent in the eyes of the law, some people remain convinced that she got away with murder. Number 19. Glen McCurley. High school cheerleader Carla Walker was abducted at gunpoint in front of her boyfriend in Benbrook, Texas, after a school dance in February of 1974. 3 days later, her murdered body was found in a culvert in Lake Benbrook. Walker had been kept alive for 48 hours before being injected with morphine and beaten, assaulted, strangled, and tortured to death. Leads quickly went dry and the case ground to a halt for the next 46 years, until 2020 when the Oxygen TV network paid for specialized DNA testing on degraded samples of clothing from the crime scene. The findings led investigators to 77-year-old Glen Samuel McCurley, who had been interviewed shortly after Walker's murder when police identified him as the owner of a pistol magazine that had been dropped in the parking lot where the young woman was abducted. McCurley claimed that his gun had recently been stolen and was released after passing a polygraph test. 3 days into his trial in August of 2021, McCurley decided to plead guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. He later told news reporter Skip Hollandsworth that he had had enough hounding. The convicted killer was never implicated in any other crimes, but authorities believe he was likely responsible for several unsolved attacks that occurred in the area during the 1970s and 80s. McCurley would have become eligible for parole in 2029, but he passed away in prison in 2023 at the age of 80. Number 18. Cristian Gasca Martinez. On an August night in 2023, someone threw eggs and flour at a car belonging to 37-year-old Osvaldo Casas while it was parked outside his Houston home. The perpetrator fled in a black truck, but the drama continued early the next morning when a neighbor told Casas that they had spotted a vehicle resembling the suspect's truck. Casas left the house to look for the perpetrator. A few minutes later, his family overheard gunshots from nearby. As he fled back toward his house with gunshot wounds, Casas collapsed. His pregnant wife, Judith Molina, who was just days away from giving birth, performed CPR in a desperate attempt to save him, but he died in her arms. She had her baby 3 days later. Police eventually traced the murder to an unlikely suspect, a high schooler named Cristian Gasca Martinez, who reportedly shot Casas because he was angry that the victim's stepdaughter had romantically rejected him. According to news reports, Casas' stepdaughter had repeatedly thwarted Gasca Martinez's advances. In addition to repeated unwanted phone calls, she had accused Gasca Martinez of assaulting and unlawfully restraining her. Prior to the shooting, Gasca Martinez reportedly posed threats and photos of himself with a gun on social media. The young woman's parents were totally unaware that Gasca Martinez was stalking their home. Following Casas' death, he was charged as an adult with murder. During a court hearing in October, Gasca Martinez could be seen blowing kisses at someone in the courtroom, although it's unclear who they were directed at. He remains in custody with bail set at $2 million. Number 17. Mara Paradox. In September 2015, a 29-year-old transgender performer named Mara Paradox was arrested in Lubbock for a marijuana charge. While her criminal case itself was nothing out of the ordinary, she went viral for her shocking mugshot, which showed her tattoo-covered face and numerous piercings. In addition to having a skull inked on her head, the whites of her eyes were dyed black. It was an appropriate look for Paradox's job as a member of a freak show troupe, which gave her an opportunity to show off her talents of eating glass, laying on a bed of machetes, and hanging hooks from her eyes. She was released from jail shortly after her arrest. Number 16. Rafael Govea Romero. On December 5th, 2023, high school cheerleader Lisbeth Medina was found bludgeoned and stabbed to death in the bathtub at her apartment in Edna. She had stayed home from school that day, and her friends and family realized something was wrong when she failed to show up at a Christmas parade to perform with her cheerleading squad. Investigators identified the suspect as a 23-year-old undocumented migrant named Rafael Govea Romero. He had a history of stalking-like behavior and was charged with murder 4 days after Medina's death. He had no prior connections with Medina or her family, whose apartment had been burglarized about a month before the murder. Lisbeth's mother, Jacqueline, told Fox News that she and her daughter had noticed things going missing from the apartment, but that she initially failed to connect the disappearing items with her daughter's death. Romero's trial was originally scheduled to take place in December 2024, but it was postponed until February 2025 after the defense received a large amount of discovery to review. The proceedings were also delayed due to the judge's order for Romero to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, as well as the defense's motion to suppress certain statements which they claim were obtained illegally. Number 15. Veronica Crow. While responding to a 4 a.m. 911 call at a San Antonio residence in May of 2024, Bexar County Sheriff's deputies found 49-year-old Damian Crow dead from a gunshot wound inside his home. He appeared to have been shot in his sleep, and suspicion quickly fell on his wife, 51-year-old Veronica Crow. According to investigators, Damien and Veronica had recently gotten into a shoving argument, but the disagreement wasn't reported to the police and no major violence seemed to have occurred prior to the shooting. The couple were reportedly in the process of separating at the time of the shooting. As Veronica sat at the Bexar County Jail on a murder charge, a large crowd gathered to remember Damien, who was an extremely well-liked member of the community. Veronica no longer appears to be in custody, and updates have not been forthcoming, leaving the current status of the case unclear. Veronica's alleged motive is also a mystery. Number 14. Lori Ruff. 42-year-old Lori Erica Ruff was devastated when her husband moved out of their Leonard, Texas home and filed for divorce in 2010. John Blake Ruff had tried to make the marriage work, but he found himself unable to tolerate Lori's unusual behavior, which included being so overprotective of their daughter that she wouldn't even let her in-laws near the girl. The couple had even gone to marriage counseling, but it had failed to repair their ailing relationship. Lori also refused to talk about her past, which also served as a point of contention with her in-laws. She told them that she was an orphaned only child and was suspiciously private. Instead of marrying Blake in front of his family and friends, Lori had insisted on eloping. She also went out of her way to make sure that the wedding wasn't announced in the local newspaper. Her closed-off behavior caused her in-laws to suspect that she was hiding a major secret about her past, and they were determined to find out who she really was. After Blake left, Lori's behavior became increasingly erratic. The heartbroken homemaker began taking her frustrations out on her former in-laws, who obtained a cease and desist order after being barraged with harassing and threatening correspondence. During the early morning hours on Christmas Eve that year, the Ruffs noticed a car running in the driveway at their home in Longview. Too nervous to approach the vehicle on their own, they called the police. Inside the car, a responding officer found Lori dead from a gunshot wound. In a final note to Blake, Lori explained her inability to cope with being alone and the overwhelming feeling that she had failed their daughter. She insisted that Blake clean out their house alone, especially when it came to a box in her bedroom closet that was labeled recipes. But Blake never returned to the residence, where his family members opened the box and found the birth certificate of an Iowa girl named Becky Sue Turner. There were also documents showing that Becky Sue Turner had changed her name to Lori Erica Kennedy. The real Becky Sue Turner had died in a house fire 40 years earlier. At the age of 2, Lori had stolen the girl's identity and then legally changed her name to further distance herself from her past. Her real identity remained a mystery until 2016, when a genetic genealogist traced Lori to a family in Wynwood, Pennsylvania, whose daughter had vanished in 1986. Kimberly Maria McLean had abruptly cut ties with her family shortly after turning 18 and never looked back, wanting no association with her past. She went to great lengths to make herself difficult to find. There was no known history of her ever committing any major crimes, leading police to conclude that something about Lori's home life bothered her so much that she wanted to permanently detach from her family. Number 13. Andrew Beard and Holly Elkins. Alyssa Burkett was just arriving at her workplace at the Green Tree Apartments in Carrollton on October 2nd, 2020, when someone shot her in the head through her car window. She initially survived the gunshot and got out of her vehicle to look for help, but her assailant chased after her and stabbed her 44 times. She died at the scene, and her attacker fled in a black SUV. There was a tracking device attached to the undercarriage of Burkett's car, indicating that her killer had targeted her specifically and had planned the murder out in advance. Burkett's mother immediately named the father of Burkett's child, Andrew Beard, as the alleged killer. While searching Beard's house and vehicle, investigators found incriminating evidence, including items that may have been used as a disguise and a charging port that matched the tracking device on Burkett's car. The following day, officers found the getaway SUV abandoned along a street less than a mile from Beard's home. 4 days after Burkett's death, Beard was charged with her murder. His fiancée, Holly Elkins, told investigators that Beard was at home with her when the crime occurred, and that as a stage 5 clinger girlfriend, she would have noticed if he had left the house. Out of an abundance of caution for the safety of Beard and Burkett's young child, federal authorities agreed to take over the case. They charged Beard with cyberstalking and using a dangerous weapon resulting in death, and he agreed to cooperate in exchange for a plea deal. Beard was sentenced to 43 years in prison. He told the FBI that Elkins had played an active role in planning Burkett's murder, prompting a years-long investigation which ended with Elkins' arrest in July of 2023. She was charged with 3 federal crimes, including conspiracy to stalk and stalking using a dangerous weapon, resulting in serious bodily injury and death. Following a 6-day trial in April 2024, a jury found Elkins guilty on all counts, resulting in a sentence of 2 life terms without parole. Number 12. Charles Bryant. In September of 2016, the dismembered and burned remains of 24-year-old Texas Woman's University student Jackie Vandergriff were found at a park in Grapevine. Surveillance footage from local bars showed a man named Charles Bryant striking up a conversation with the slain woman just hours before her death, making him an immediate person of interest in the case. During the investigation, detectives spoke with Bryant's ex-girlfriend, 18-year-old Caitlin Mathis, who later told 48 Hours that she began to notice red flags just hours after she started dating Bryant. Describing her ex as manipulative and narcissistic, Mathis said that she ended the relationship just 3 weeks before Vandergriff's murder. During that time, Bryant was arrested 3 times for showing up at Mathis's college, prompting her to file for a restraining order against him. On the day Vandergriff's body was found, Bryant contacted Mathis in violation of the restraining order. This was actually what landed him at the police station in the first place, giving authorities the opportunity to question him in connection with the young woman's murder. Bryant initially denied knowing Vandergriff and claimed to have no memory of the night she died. He eventually provided details that only the killer would know, and the murder weapon was found during a search of his house. A trash bin outside the suspect's home contained a Texas Woman's University satchel, matching the one that Vandergriff was known to carry, along with zip ties with blonde hair in them. Police also found a receipt from 4:43 in the morning, just 2 hours before Jackie's body was found, and were able to connect it with surveillance footage of Bryant buying a shovel and cold medicine. Inside Bryant's vehicle, police found a cell phone battery that they believed belonged to Vandergriff, along with a stun gun that had her DNA on it. Investigators theorized that Bryant took his anger over Mathis's rejection out on Vandergriff, and he was charged with murder. His defense attorney argued that Vandergriff died of accidental asphyxiation during consensual intimacy, and that his client panicked and tried to dispose of her body because he was afraid of getting in trouble. Bryant was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Number 11. Rudy Carrillo. 29-year-old Shoyla Walker was sitting in his apartment in San Antonio on Valentine's Day in 2015 when his neighbor, 26-year-old Rudy Carrillo, kicked his door open. Walker told Carrillo to leave, but he refused, prompting Walker to fire his crossbow at the intruder. The arrow struck Carrillo in the chest and he was taken to the hospital prior to being booked into custody on suspicion of burglary of habitation with intent to commit assault. Carrillo's mugshot certainly captured some attention, but it's unclear what caused the disfigurement to his face. Number 10. Cierra Alexis Sutton. On August the 16th of 2017, 30-year-old Cierra Alexis Sutton shot her living boyfriend in the head and dismembered his body with a machete in Baytown, Texas. According to local police, Sutton stopped answering phone calls and wasn't available for interviews after she reported 32-year-old Stephen Coleman as a missing person on August the 18th. 2 days after the killing, a neighbor described the suspect as having acted like she knew nothing about the man's disappearance. 4 days after her report, Coleman's torso was discovered at a Baytown landfill. Investigators ultimately determined that he'd been fatally shot in the head by his lover while he was asleep after they'd gotten into an argument. The woman cut him up into pieces, wrapped his body parts in a sheet, and disposed of them in several dumpsters around the city. She fled from Baytown to Metairie, Louisiana, but was later found and arrested. According to detectives, she openly told multiple people about the shooting and said she'd dismembered his corpse because he was too heavy to carry. In her official confession, she added that her 10-year-old daughter was in the living room at the time of the murder. In February of 2019, she was convicted and consequently sentenced to 45 years behind bars. Number 9. Texas woman. A traffic stop conducted by a sheriff's deputy in the east of La Praya, Texas, culminated in the arrest of a woman driving a silver vehicle on February the 25th of 2023. When the deputy instructed the woman to pop the trunk, an adult female and child were discovered inside. The driver, who hadn't been identified as of the most recent updates, was charged with smuggling of persons with a likelihood of serious bodily injury and smuggling of persons under 18 years of age. Her car was impounded, and the woman and child who hid inside the compartment were turned over to Border Patrol agents. Number 8. Stanton Pierce, Laurie Perry, and Rebecca Bond. The body of Tylerman Luis Martinez was found in a cemetery in Smith County, Texas, in September of 2016. Stanton Pierce, Laurie Perry, and Rebecca Bond were accused of killing the 62-year-old after they burned his body near the Antioch Cemetery. The motive for the killing was unfortunately unknown. Perry told authorities that she'd witnessed Martinez being shot by Bond at a Littlefield Drive residence. As detailed in the arrest affidavit, she said that a .22 caliber rifle was used and added that she wore gloves to break down the rifle, while 52-year-old Pierce and Bond transferred the body to an undisclosed location. The two women, 56-year-old Perry and Bond, aged 37, were immediately arrested. Pierce was caught September the 22nd of 2016 following a car chase in which his truck slammed into a tree. The man pleaded guilty to tampering with or fabricating physical evidence with intent to impair a human corpse in February of 2017 and was given a 40-year prison sentence. On April the 6th of 2017, Perry accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 15 years in custody on a charge identical to Pierce's. Bond, meanwhile, also accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 50 years in prison for a murder conviction. Number 7. Troy LaRue Parker. A missing 19-year-old girl's body was found inside the trunk of her car in Missouri City, Texas, on August the 27th of 2018. When Sabrina Herrera's family weren't able to reach her that day, they quickly grew worried and eventually tried to locate her using an app. They alerted investigators after they tracked her phone to the 1600 block of Bent Oak Drive. When the police arrived in the area, they located the woman's vehicle and found her body in the trunk. Upon further investigation, it was determined that her high school sweetheart was the last person who'd seen her before she went missing. The boyfriend, 20-year-old Troy LaRue Parker, was subsequently taken into custody, after which he admitted to strangling Herrera using a cord at his home in the 8400 block of Quail Run Drive in Houston. He then added that he placed her body in the trunk of her car, drove to Missouri City, and left the vehicle in a Fort Bend neighborhood. He never disclosed the motive for killing his girlfriend of 5 years, but was charged with murder. He pleaded guilty, was fined $10,000, and on October the 3rd of 2019, received a sentence of 45 years in prison. Number 6. Christopher Johnson. On the night of July the 25th of 2015, Christopher Johnson was arrested for driving under the influence in Harris County, Texas. After being taken to jail, he was reportedly choked by 2 Harris County employees after he smiled while his mugshot was being taken. He was reportedly told by one of the officers that he should take the picture right, meaning without such a jovial expression. The suspect replied by saying that he always smiled when pictures of him were taken. While another shot was being snapped, he was allegedly choked by another officer who was wearing gloves. A year later, Johnson sued Harris County for the alleged assault, which included choking, berating, and ridiculing him while he posed for a total of 10 photographs. Number 5. Sean Carl Payne. On the night of October the 4th of 2012, 35-year-old Sean Carl Payne was accused of public intoxication outside of Shamrock's Bar in Humble, in the Houston metropolitan area of Texas. Police were phoned about his inebriated behavior by employees at the Irish Bar. According to law enforcement sources, the establishment's patrons said that the man had enjoyed beers and several shots. When Payne was taken to jail, an officer had to physically hold his head up in order for a mugshot to be taken. Number 4. Marissa Ann Sluss and Hannah Marie Webb. At around 3 a.m. on May the 4th of 2017, Texas woman Marissa Ann Sluss called the cops on herself for being too inebriated to drive. Sluss and her friend, 20-year-old Hannah Marie Webb, were parked in the middle of the street on the 100 block of West Parkwood Avenue in Friendswood when officers arrived at the scene. According to law enforcement, the 25-year-old motorist was on her phone and smelled distinctly of alcohol. She told the police that she'd dialed 911 because Webb wasn't complying. The two failed the sobriety test they were administered and were consequently arrested. Webb was charged with public intoxication, while Sluss was charged with driving while intoxicated. Number 3. Wanda the Pom-Pom Mom Holloway. On January the 30th of 1991, a neighborhood in Channelview, Texas, discovered that a local mother tried to secure her 13-year-old daughter's spot on the cheerleading squad by plotting to eliminate the competition. 37-year-old Wanda Holloway was reportedly willing to kill for her daughter Shanna's cheerleading endeavors. The latter didn't initially have a spot on the team because another hopeful, Amber Heath, was chosen over her. Holloway subsequently asked her former brother-in-law Terry Harper to help her arrange the killing of Amber's mother, Verna Heath. She believed that if Verna was dead, her daughter would be too devastated to perform, which would then result in Shanna getting the spot. When Holloway met with Harper to finalize the hit, the latter covertly recorded their conversation, after which he reported her to the authorities. The audio tapes revealed that the woman agreed to pay $5,000 for the killing of both mother and daughter, and $2,500 if only the mother was killed. Holloway was arrested and charged with solicitation of capital murder. On September the 3rd of 1991, she was found guilty and was given a recommendation for a 15-year prison sentence. Additionally, she was fined $10,000. 5 years later, her sentence was reduced to 10 years after the defense petitioned for a new trial. On March the 1st of 1997, after she'd served 6 years, she was ordered to serve the remaining 9.5 years on probation. Dubbed the Pom-Pom Mom, Holloway was also required to serve 1,000 hours of community service. Today's topic was requested by Dove Master and as told by. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Terry Missy Bevers. At around 5 a.m. on April the 18th of 2016, Terry Missy Bevers was getting ready for a fitness class when she was found unresponsive by her students at Midlothian's Creekside Church. The 45-year-old fitness instructor from Red Oak, Texas, had multiple puncture wounds to the chest as well as a head injury. When paramedics arrived, she was officially pronounced dead, and law enforcement commenced an investigation into her death. Camera footage from the church showed an individual who walked with a limp, wearing a SWAT uniform and tactical gear at around 3:50 a.m. The unidentified suspect broke open a door with a hammer to gain access. The victim was first seen in the church at around 4:20 a.m. Several law enforcement agencies were still working on the unsolved case as of the latest developments. In 2021, a reward of $150,000 was offered in exchange for information that could lead to the suspect's identification and capture. Number 1. Valerie McDaniel and Leon Jacob. Texas couple Valerie McDaniel and Leon Jacob were arrested on March the 10th of 2017 after being accused of hiring a hitman to take care of both their exes. 48-year-old Valerie and Jacob, aged 39, met with the prospective hitman at an Olive Garden restaurant in Houston. They offered $20,000 and 2 Cartier watches in exchange for the lives of their respective ex-lovers. Unbeknownst to them, the assassin was an undercover cop, later identified only as Detective Javier. According to investigators, Jacob was out on bond after being charged with assault and accused of stalking his ex-girlfriend, 32-year-old Megan Veracas. He told Javier that he wanted Veracas dead so that she couldn't testify against him in court. Valerie then allegedly requested that her ex-husband, Marion McDaniel III, be murdered under the guise of a carjacking gone wrong. The undercover officer coordinated with other law enforcement officials and made sure the intended targets were safe. After Marion and Veracas were tipped off to their former partner's scheme, the two cooperated with authorities to secure their arrest. McDaniel faked his own death with photos of him slumped to the car with a bullet wound on his head. Veracas was asked to do something similar. Tied up to a chair with duct tape over her mouth, she was photographed as though she'd been kidnapped. Javier took the pictures to the couple as proof that the exes had been dealt with. Later on, officers showed up at Valerie's flat at the River Oaks high-rise apartment building, where they informed the couple that McDaniel had been found dead. The officers' body cameras captured the pair's feigned shock over the news. Even before the officers started asking them any questions, Valerie had already provided an alibi. They were both subsequently arrested and charged with solicitation of capital murder. Jacob remained in custody without bond, while Valerie posted a $50,000 bond on March the 25th of 2017. She then recorded her last words on her iPad, in which she said that she never wanted to hurt anyone. 2 days later, she jumped off the 7th floor of the apartment building in the 2200 block of Willowwick Road. A year later, Jacob was convicted of plotting the double murder and sentenced to life in prison. The judge decreed that he would become eligible for parole after serving at least 30 years. Thanks for watching. Today we are doing a quiz question to close things out. What is the largest American state by square miles? Leave your answer in the comments section below, without looking at other people's answers, of course.